Left that night or the next day, but I think that was the time. And I think from leaving from there, and you can elaborate, is we were driving and we were in Snoopy, or we were in a van, and you remember you drove through. You thought it was like a tornado, but it was the Crazy Nights tour for Kiss, and they had the 100-foot Kiss sign, and the poster was a picture of Gene Simmons on that tour, and basically. And he's in front of this 100-foot Kiss sign, and I'm like, I looked at that and I said, that's what I want to do. We're just not sure how this is going to go. I mean, and so we go back to the hotel, we change our clothes, kind of do our thing. And I remember, we're coming back, and literally there's a one-way kind of into, like, you're getting to the club, and the cars are backed up. Like, and I'm thinking, is there something going on? Is there an accident up here or what? And no, it was people getting in the parking lot of the club.
Jumped on the 101 after 2 days on the road, 8 lanes of chaos, and I found a thoughts of home. Our destination, the land of hopes and dreams, a side of men, the more of civilized society. Under the sign, 9 letters in the sky, lies a city where dreams chase us, come to live or go to die. Hard times ahead, and some of the struggle that I read was a wisdom from a man who makes the concrete with no bread. Whiskey, no go-go, oh yeah. The streets live nude show. The walk of fame will bear my name.
All right, so for me, I started out, 16 years old probably. I mean, it's been a lot of years ago. So kind of what got me into music was the very first thing I ever seen. I was listening to music at the time, but I wasn't really thinking about playing it. Is I saw the poster of Crazy Nights. And I don't know if it was at a friend's house, but it was the Crazy Nights tour for Kiss. And they had the 100-foot Kiss sign. And the poster was a picture of Gene Simmons on that tour, and basically, and he's in front of this 100-foot Kiss sign, and I'm like, that's what I want to do. And I had been, up till that, I had been kind of playing around with instruments. So when I actually started playing guitar. I took 2 years of guitar. I got a guitar given to me by my uncle. I started playing guitar, and actually I took 2 years of lessons from Tom Hopwood, local guitar player that a lot of people know, at Byerly's. And I really wanted to be a guitar player. And I don't know, after 2 years of lessons, and Tom did a great job. I mean, he tried to show me, he showed me how to be a rhythm player. I just couldn't get the lead. Basically, I just kind of gave up on guitar. And at that time, there was plenty of guitar players. We had probably 5 or 6 different guitar players coming over. I'm like, okay, we had a couple guys singing. I'm like, I don't really need to play guitar. Let me try something else. So at that time, we didn't have a drummer. So I'm thinking, okay, why don't I go ahead and pick up the drums? I had a drum set sitting there. I'm like, this can't be that hard. Give guitar a break. So for the band I was in, I don't remember the name, I ended up starting playing drums. I started trying to learn drums, which turned out to be it didn't go well. Let's just put that. My arms are not coordinated to play drums. I had 4 left arms basically. But I tried very hard. We practiced. We actually had a gig, Peak and Skateland. We were playing at Peak and Skateland, paid gig. And like I said, I can't remember what the band name was called. It might have been my early bootleg band. But I practiced and we rehearsed, and I thought, okay, this is not too bad. Maybe it's, we were playing AC/DC, we were playing some of this different rock stuff, but ended up going and playing this gig, and we're playing, and there's people there in Peak and Skateland. They're all skating around. We played at one end. First set kind of goes by, and then we start into the second set, and next thing you know, the owner's coming up to us, and he's like, basically has an envelope. And he kind of stops us, and we stop the show, and I step down off the drum. And what's funny is that on my drum, I actually had a light that I put under my snare drum. So I'm thinking I'm a cool drummer, And he's actually handing us an envelope, paying us to leave early. He gives us $100 extra to stop because you're killing my bottom line. He goes, I need to get you guys out of here. You're running everybody out. So I don't know if it was my drumming. I don't know if it was just the, the lack of, just the band not being that good. But it kind of just felt that drums I was struggling. Some guys came in and out, and I just thought, why don't I just start playing bass? I don't know. We had one there. And so that kind of led me into starting to play bass. And so I got a bass amp and started playing bass in the band. And then, kind of from there formed a band called Bootleg, which it was kind of my first original type band. We did an album way back when, and recorded at Greg Clemens' studio. And so it was kind of my real intro into the bass playing world. We played a gig one time. There was at the end of my grandmother's street where we practiced, it was an ice cream store. Dick's Dairy Delight is what it was called. And we always called it the Dick's Dairy Delight Tour because it was me, Chris Watts, Travis Sinks, which was a guy that we used to play with, and a singer named Brad Wilcoxon. And we played a show there, and we always called it the Dick's Dairy Delight Tour. We played on this trailer out front, and there was this big trail opening thing. And so, it was cool, and that kind of started us. And then our singer ended up leaving, and we got another guy named Jared Masters, and Jared was, really good singer. And that's when we started writing our own material. So that's kind of how I got started into the bass world. I kind of let go of the guitar. And I had been singing, so, I kind of thought, too, that maybe I could be a rhythm guitar and sing, and I just, after I started playing bass, I'm like, well, I can play bass and sing, too. So kind of led me to be a vocalist as well in some sense. So that's kind of how I started, and then, obviously rolled into Trash Can Muffy after that. That's when I, got with Eddie, Frank. There was actually a band in between. It kind of started as me, Frank Young, Murray Ice, and Andy Webb. And that's how I met Frank Young. And so we started that, played, I don't know, we probably did a few practices, and I don't know, for whatever reason it didn't work out. And then so me and Frank went off and started Trash Can Muffy, which we got Carl Mustard, and that's when Eddie Callison came in. And so that kind of took us into the bar world. That kind of took us into starting to play the bar scene and get out there. And we started doing shows with like Raw Honey and all these other local great bands, getting on bills, which kind of, and in that band, we too started to write originals. It kind of became a thing to do originals as well as doing covers. We were playing in Cahoots, playing all the clubs. We were doing the big Wanted entertainment shows, the big, it'd be us and Fox and all these bands showcasing in the bars for Wanted Entertainment. So it was cool, and we were touring, and we were playing around Iowa and Wisconsin. I mean, we were getting around, And I don't know, the band kind of, faltered off. Carl and Eddie were kind of wanting to get out of it. So then, obviously we get Kenny joins up with us, and then we get John in there and singing. And that kind of changed the whole evolution of that band because we kind of converted different songs, but we also converted into, going into originals. And that's kind of, from there, we evolved into the originals, started writing a CD, went and recorded. And we had kind of pre-recorded and we had kind of used Eddie's drum. Eddie had recorded some of the stuff. So when Kenny came in, he had to come in and try to record over that and try to, patch all this in. So I think we ended up doing the drums and the bass tracks again. So we ended up coming out with this album, and then, then the great plan was for us to move to LA, and we played around the scene, we saved our money, did what we could, kind of tried to plan this thing out, even went out and checked it out, and then we ended up moving out to LA, and living there for a year, which was an experience, all in itself. Four of us living in a condo, trying to make it, and it was, to me, it was a great experience. It was a struggle. I mean, we almost starved to death. I think there was a few times it was very close. So we basically did what we could, worked odd jobs, and out there at that time, it was kind of the end of the 80s, 90s had kicked in. The scene had dried up a lot, and the pay to play was still happening. So we were literally having to pay money to play. But we got to play some cool places, the Roxy, and some cool clubs down on the Strip, and got to experience some good stuff, but it was pay to play. So, I think as a learning experience, we learned a lot from being there and just being part of doing that. And it kind of made us that band of brothers, too, because we had to live through some hard times to do that. We lost some equipment down the highway. I remember one time we're cruising down the 101, and Snoopy, our van, and Kenny's drums or his cymbals were in a bag and literally fell out the side of Snoopy on the highway, so, it was just such an experience, but I think we learned a lot as players and really got to understand the industry, and, obviously it didn't pan out. We got to meet some cool, we got to meet Kenny Kerner, the guy who discovered Kiss, and he was honest with us. He listened to our CD, basically told us, hey, you guys a little bit dated for the scene. The scene's kind of dried up. You're better off to go home. And so what we ended up doing is making the decision that, hey, we've been out here a year. We're basically bleeding money. We're barely making it. I think we had switched through everybody of getting into paying bills and stuff. Decision. We pack up all our stuff, kind of leave it all behind. Decide we're going to come back and try to make a bigger. Try to make it, get our name out here versus trying to do it out there where it just wasn't working out. So we came back and we started doing, at that time, clubs were doing the 4-night shows where you could go in and play like a Tuesday through Saturday or Wednesday through Sunday. So we kind of got on that circuit when we got back. We wanted to still play. And that kind of led us into the Yankee Clipper, which, we had played the Clipper in Trash Can Muffy. Back in the day, but when we got back, we kind of wanted to get back into doing that, and that was a week-long gig. So that basically was, we started on Tuesday night and you played all the way till Sunday, and so that was a gig we were doing. We were going up to North Dakota, doing Minot, doing like a Sunday through or Wednesday through Sunday. So that kind of that's kind of where we came back. We were doing some local shows as well. We were playing at JJ's, but I think most of the time we spent out on the road. We had some agent help a little bit at the time. So most of the time we were traveling, doing these 4-night shows. And I don't know, I think we were at the Clipper one time and we kind of joked about doing the tribute thing. It'd been kind of this thing, it bounced around. Tributes were very hot at the time. They were making great money. They were playing a lot, doing these great shows. So we were like, why don't we do what tribute can we do? And ironically, it kind of started out as Pantera. It was this thought of doing Pantera. And it was me, John, Kenny, and Frank, and it was like, John just literally, I think we even tried to learn a few songs, but John's like, I'm no Phil. I cannot do this. So it's just not going to be me. It's not my style, And so we kind of got off that, and I don't know, I think we were at the Yankee Clipper one night, and John didn't even play guitar, but we've been doing some Metallica. And the sound guy up there, Rat Boy came up to us one night. We were just sitting at the bar between a set, and he's like, you know what? You guys do Metallica awesome. Your singer looks just like Metallica. So we were like, why don't we do a Metallica tribute? And John's like, well, I don't play guitar and like all this. So, it kind of getting this thing, and we kind of went back and forth about it. And finally we were like, John's like, hey, why not? We'll figure it out. I'll learn how to play guitar and we'll just try to do it. And so that converted us out of kind of Mother's Mistake days into going into Master Puppets. Moving over to the tribute, so we had, we started practicing that, getting our show down, had our big show at In Cahoots, and that's when we actually signed with the Mark Allen agency. He had been kind of representing Sly Dog, and Trent Keeling had turned us on to him in Toy Box, and so we had him come in. He ended up signing us. We had a great show. We had him brought in. I think we sold the place out over capacity. Mudvayne was on that bill. A few other bands. Sugar Buzz was on that with us. So it was a great show. And from that night, he basically signed us to the Mark Allen agency out of Minneapolis. And so that kind of took us in a totally different direction. That put us on the road. And from that point on, we basically started playing. We toured all over the United States. Literally, probably there's very few states we actually did not play, as far as that. But we would, go out on these road shows and just, really kind of live in that, being Metallica. We had our Creeping Death, which was our RV, which was, I'm surprised we ever made it home from that, on that thing a few times. But, but it was a great experience, and just getting out there, and it really kind of got my taste for the road, and really kind of feeling how I felt about being out on the road, and just being able to go to different places and touch different people and see, the fans in different areas, and it really kind of seeded that in me to want to travel. So we ended up doing, we did that for quite a few years. And there was some transitions in the band. Kenny kind of stepped away, and then, we got a different drummer. And then in 2000, I ended up stepping away from it as well. Just, we've been on the road a long time and playing a lot. Just a lot of personal things were going on at the time, and I felt it was time for me to get off. Leading out of the master years there, in 2000, I decided to, I kind of got off. I took a little break from music. I don't know, probably 6 months to a year. Probably didn't do much. I actually kind of tinkered back with guitar again. Just didn't really. I was burnt, basically. I was trying to get my life back together, so I ended up not doing anything for probably about I'd say almost a year. Maybe, like I said, I tinkered around with a few guys. I think I did a little band with Jason King and Randy Roth, and I did the Area 51 deal. Nothing that really turned into a lot. It was just kind of like a break time. I didn't really know if I wanted to continue with bass, or I was just after being on the road so long and I was kind of burnt out. So I was kind of hanging around. I was working. I'd come back, got a job. Was just kind of, taking it easy. And then, actually Rick Henderson Jeff Eaton reached out to me. I was working at East Peoria Pizza Hut, and Jeff Eaton had come in there, and he's like, hey, what are you up to? And I'd known Jeff for years. Jeff's been a great player, through all the years. And, he came in, he's like, hey, I need a bass player, in this band. Me, Rick Henderson, and John Patty are guys, and it's called the Barflies. Or I think it was Baked or Barflies at the time. So we ended up, so I was like, yeah, sure, I hadn't, and the thing is, I hadn't played my bass in a year, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to have to get up to speed. So I was like, yeah, well, send me a set list, let me know what your set list is, call me, and I'll start working on it. And I had known Rick because Rick, obviously Rick is big around the scene. He'd been in Toy Box and other bands, and I knew Rick Henderson, and I had done shows when we were in Master with the Pantera Tribute that he was in, War Nerve. So I kind of knew Rick, and I knew him from the area. I didn't know him personally, but so I was like, yeah, this would be cool. So I ended up going over there. I learned 10 of their songs. Went over, started jamming with them, and I was like, this is awesome, and they were already playing out quite a bit. They were probably playing 2 to 3 times a week, and they were out doing different things. They were, I think at the time Jeff was trying to get in with 106 as the house band. A lot of great things are going on, so I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do this, and that kind of started out, the Barflies years basically, which spanned of a lot of drinking and a lot of shots, and we played around the area. And again, kind of the same thing. We didn't play a lot in town. We would play in Macomb, and we were just playing out on these road shows, Iowa, wherever we could go outside of town, we were playing. So, so we ended up playing, we played at Thorns quite a bit up in Creve Coeur, top of the hill there. Mr. Gary Thorne owned it. And one thing about the Barflies is whenever we played there, Gary would have to order extra Jägermeister because we were like, I don't know if it was something about that band, but trays of shots would flow, and it was this constant, like, and he would, he's like, you drank me out of Jaeger, like I had 3 bottles of Jaeger and you drank me out of it. So the Barflies was a very big party band. We portrayed that, and that was kind of, and unfortunately we partaked in that as ourselves, which a lot of nights led to drunken debauchery, but it was part of the show, and it was just kind of what that band was about. And kind of the same deal with, we kind of went through some renditions. We had John Patty playing drums, great drummer. And then, we had Eric Yarborough in there for a little while, and Gary Horry ended up playing with us. And I think even he played with us, from time to time. So, it was a good run of, a few years of doing that, probably 3 or 4 years, as the Barflies. But then, so Rick played in a band called Spine, and so he was kind of wanting to do Spine again. So, we decided that, hey, he asked me, would you be interested in, getting with Spine? Let's write some more originals, do another album. So we kind of led into, kind of doing that with the Barflies. And so we didn't want to call it Spine. We wanted to call it something, to give it a little bit different name. So we ended up calling it Brotherhood of Spine. And, we basically, it was me, Sean, Scott McClellan, and Rick. And they were them 3 were the original. They had a different bass player before me, and so we decided to start to write a new album. So we started putting together some songs. But during this time, that was the same band that was the Warner. That was the Pantera Tribute they were. So as we were doing this, kind of got brought up about doing this Pantera. Let's do another tribute. So that led us. We kind of talked about it, and I'm like, yeah, that would be cool. I mean, we're writing originals, but we can bring this thing back up. And they didn't want to go with War Nerve. I mean, I just kind of start with a fresh name. So that's where Cemetery Gates came from. We started, just kind of want to start with a fresh slate. And so we were kind of doing that. So at the time, it was balanced in 3 bands. We were doing the Barflies, which was playing quite a bit. We were doing Spine. We were trying to record and write an album. We were going down to Eclipse and, writing, recording down there with Eric Nelson. And then we were also starting to try to get the Pantera thing going again. And so that kind of, I don't know if it kind of led out of, the Barflies kind of starting to dwindle down some, and then, we kind of started moving more into the Pantera, and getting into that. We did do some original shows with Brotherhood Spine. We traveled around a little bit, and we were kind of doing the Gates and the Spine thing at the same time. So that kind of, I don't know if it just kind of, Barflies kind of fell off to the side a little bit, and then we just kind of in there, just kind of teetering out. But and that kind of pushed us into doing Gates, which of course got us back into doing road shows again. We started looking at our radius and where we're going to travel. Started playing some big rooms like Pops and Sauget or Sauget, whichever flavor you want to call it. But great room down there. We started traveling to Tennessee and just getting back on the road and really developing Cemetery Gates, playing in Chicago. And that kind of evolved over, we were still doing some original stuff, but we were really more kind of focusing in on the Pantera, Cemetery Gates, which, took off in a way, for, being in different tributes throughout my career, basically, of playing. It's just amazing at the fans, because in Master we had our Metallica fans, and they're so diehard, you just know there's a certain kind of fan base that comes with that. And with Cemetery Gates, it was the same way. Pantera fans are absolutely insane. We'll love them to death. They are just loyal, and so we just really this thing started taking off. We were starting to book. We were playing a lot more shows, playing bigger shows. Just getting out there and really trying to make this thing, and I just can't. The success of it was just amazing because it just obviously it was a turn of events. 2004, Dime passed. It was passed away, and so for us that it kind of changed a little bit in the environment of how we did it and going forward. But I think it almost made it a little bit more treasured because we were going to continue on. Because now Pantera was obviously not going to be able to play like they did as the original lineup. It wasn't going to have been talk of Zach doing it and all this stuff. So for us, it became even more important to continue that legacy and to play that music the way it should be played, to put on that show and to do that. So, I think after that, it really just, we tightened down and we really tried to drive into becoming, making it not just about the music, but about the show and kind of a tribute to Dime. And I think even after that, Vinny passing away later on, just it kind of anchored that in us that, if we're going to do this, we need to do it right and we need to do it justice. So, and not that we didn't do that in the beginning, but it really kind of took hold after that event. So, so we did that. I was in that, like just 16 years, 15, 16 years total. Started out in 2002 maybe, or 2003 in that band, and so it was a long-running band for me, and it's a big part of my, playing history, but, as all my bands, Master was the same way, and Mother's Mistake, and, each band had its own legacy to it, and its own set of adventures that really just, I'm grateful, I guess, that I was able to partake, and just the musicians and the people I was able to play with throughout, so, so that, Gates has kind of became that, kind of last, I moved basically is what happened. We moved to Tucson, and so the band I left the band 2017 or 18, and then so they ended up getting another bass player, and obviously I don't know, Rick ended up moving and things happened, and the band kind of dissolved off, and they've become Domination and something else now. But just it was an important part of the years, for me, and it was an honor. It was an honor just to see the fans and to live that and to be able to get out and play. So. Oh, stories from the road. So I guess one that really kind of sticks out to me, going back into Cemetery Gates, is when, obviously the night that Dime passed. And so that was on a Wednesday night, December 8th. We were set to play Pops on that Saturday. And so we'd been playing Pops. We had done a few shows there. So we'd built a pretty good following there. People, we were drawing tickets. And even for this show, we had a good ticket sale. So, and I remember it so, just like it was yesterday. I remember I was downstairs. I think I was even working on promo for the show. in my apartment because my computer and stuff was down in our basement, in a room in our basement. And I ended up seeing this news flash, Dimebag Darrell killed. And I'm like, no, this is fake news, whatever, this can't be. So then, of course, I get on the news channels and there's this big story about the Alrosa Villa and how Dime had been shot on stage. And I'm like, oh, no, just literally like shock. Like, you're just like, that can't be true. So, I'm thinking, and I remember I just had to kind of sit there for a moment. I'm like, how can that be? How can someone get, this doesn't happen in the music industry. I mean, you hear drug overdoses, stuff like that, but you don't see someone, very often getting shot on stage, especially in a club type, situation. So here we are with this show. And at that time, Scotty had stepped away from the band. Scotty McClellan was our original guitar player. Personal things, he decided to step away. We had just had Brian Goody had joined the band. So, he was new. We had this show coming on, and so tickets had been going well. So, I basically kind of pondered that night. I'm like, and I can't remember if I called Rick that night or maybe it was early the next morning. But I remember I went up and I told Annette. I went to bed and I said, Dimebag's been killed. And she's like, what? And so it was just this huge shock. And just like, what is going on? So, next morning, I think I get a hold of Rick and we talk, because we have this show and we're like, should we even do this show? Should this show go on? I'm like, is it going to be disrespectful to do it? Should we hold off? Is it safe? Is this something that's going to, are we going to be safe? Is this something that's going to happen? Something's going on, is this an anger thing against Pantera or what? So, we talked with Rick. Rick talked it out, and Rick's like, yeah, I feel we should go on, and, we should do this show. So we ended up calling the promoter at Pops, and we said, hey, what do you want to do here? We're fine to do the show if you want us to continue. If not, we totally understand. We'll cancel. We'll figure it out from there. And so I think Rich Donald was the guy who was booking us there. He says, he's like, yeah, I want you guys to do the show. He goes, we're doing this. He goes, I feel we need to do this. The ticket, So we're like, okay. He's like, well, I'm going to have extra security in there. I'm going to have, we're going to have extra security guards around the door. We're going to put the barrier up. We're going to push the barrier back. We're going to do this safe as can. We're going to maybe do some, I think they even did pat downs a little bit too. I said, that's fine. let's do this. And I remember Brian Goody, because Goody was new to the band. Goody calls me and he's like, are we doing this? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, I don't know. And I'm like, just go down. Because he was new, I don't even know. He probably had done a handful of shows and a little bit of practice. And I'm like, just go down there and do the best you can. We just got to go down and give it the best show. We have to make this. If this is the one that's going to, we need to do it right. So, we ended up going down there. We ended up, keeping the show going. Go down, and normally, at a tribute show, you go in early, you set up, you get all your stuff. And I remember we were really precise about it. And we were coming up with this thing where we were going to put Dime's, basically put one of Dime's guitars, Scotty played, out on the stage, or Brian was playing, and we were going to put it out on the stage, and then put a shot out there, and then have like a spotlight coming in on it. We were going to try to make it, a tribute to Dime. So then, we sound check and everything, and we're thinking, okay, we're just not sure how this is going to go. And so we go back to the hotel, we change our clothes, kind of do our thing. And I remember, we're coming back, and literally there's a one-way kind of into, like, you're getting to the club, and the cars are backed up. Like, and I'm thinking, is there something going on? Is there an accident up here or what? And no, it was people getting in the parking lot of the club. I was just like, no way. And literally, so we end up getting around, and I just remember looking at the parking lot, and Pops has just got huge parking lots on each side. And it's just full. It's full of capacity. People are lined up out front. And I'm like, oh, this thing is just blown up, So we go in. Of course, it brings your nerve. I usually don't get nervous on a big crowd. It's usually the empty rooms that make me nervous. But I was like, oh, we have got to play our A game. This thing has to go by the numbers. And so we ended up, we get around there, and I just remember seeing that mass of people and just coming together. And we had a couple opening bands, I think, and then we ended up hitting the stage, and we did that where we had, the guitar out there, the shot. We were playing some intro music we'd come up with, and we all went out and had a black tooth grin before we started. And so we ended up playing the show, and this show just goes absolutely crazy. People are climbing. There's these big steel rafters, and the people are climbing the rafters and dropping. But the emotion of that show, everybody was sad. There was people that was just they were just literally in front of us bawling, during the show. And there's people that just anger and just all this, and you could just tell it was a very emotional show. And so we ended up playing this show, and we gave it everything we had. I mean, we literally we left nothing on the table for this thing to be, we wanted it to be that show that was the tribute to Dime, and we wanted to do it right. And just the amount of people there was it was one of the most amazing things. And just like I said, you could feel the emotion in the room. It was just, all the Pantera fans were just, it was just a mix of, and you felt that on the stage. It was just totally nothing I've ever experienced in any of my playing career. And then we ended up playing and our last song of Cemetery Gates was always Cemetery Gates. And I just remember we're playing that song at the end of the night and just looking out, and everybody had kind of calmed down from the moshing part of it, and everybody's just literally, and you could just see people just bawling, and I mean, it still gives me goosebumps. I'm like, and it was so cool to be able to, to touch them and to be able to continue on with that music and to bring that to them after such a tragedy. And I think after that it ingrained us to really push that hard. But I'll never forget that show. It was one of them shows that we didn't really understand how it was going to go. We were worried, and it turns out to be this great tribute. And I think it really set us up with the fans there, because after that, we always had our fan base there. So that was one story that always kind of stick with me, and one memory that I always have is knowing that we were able to do that show. It went as good as it did, and being able to touch the people after such a tragic thing that happened. So. Then one time when we were in Cemetery Gates, we played in Tennessee, and so normally we get hotel rooms, and so this club we played at, it's like, yeah, we got you some rooms over here. We end up going to this hotel, go to the front desk, and she's like, yeah, you're in this back area. These are your rooms. So we go into these rooms, and we're noticing that like there's some cars broke down in the parking lot. They're on, they're basically on blocks, and we're thinking, okay, no big deal. We on the road, you don't necessarily get the pick of the best hotels. I mean, obviously clubs, they try to save money, so you just get put into whatever, and we got used to it. It wasn't a huge deal, but I remember we went, we were going back to our room, and we're like, I think me and Scotty had bunked up that night, and so we go into our room, and there's like garbage all over the floor, and it's like the heat, and it's wintertime, and the heat's not working. Like there's no heat in this room. And so we go over to Rick's room, I think Rick and Buddy, and same deal, garbage under the bed, and we're like, what is going on, So we end up calling down, we're like, we have no heat up here. There's no heat, and there's like garbage everywhere. And they're like, oh, we'll get you, if we can't get your heat fixed, we'll give you this, we'll give you a heater, So we end up just making the best of it, whatever. We end up going back, we play the show. We come back. And no, actually, Buddy wasn't in it. We had a drummer named Johnny. He was a short-time drummer we had in Gates. So we'd come back, and I was like, well, I'm not staying in this room. I'm not staying in the room we're in. I want a room with heat. This is just ridiculous. It's wintertime. So Johnny, the drummer that we had at the time, he's like, hey, I got us a different room. I talked to the lady up front. She's taking us to a different room. So we basically, down the hallway, we go into this room. And we walk up to it, and the door's open. That's the first thing I'm like, what is going on with this room? So we walk in, and we're sitting in there, and we've got our bags with us, and we're sitting down, and I'm looking around the room, and I notice some clothes hung up over here, a toothbrush over there. I'm like, someone's in this room, And then so Johnny's like, oh yeah, he goes, I just saw the door open, I just took it. They didn't really give us his room. So I'm like, what are we doing here? So I ended up just going, I'm like, you know what? It's 4:00 in the morning. I'm tired. I'm going across the street. If you want to go with me, I'm just going to go across the street to the hotel that I know is over there. I'm going to get my own room, and I'm going to get some sleep. So I go over there. He's like, I'm going to stay here. I'm fine, whatever. So I go over there, and I go in, and the lady's like, she's like, I'm like, well, we were staying over there. We're in the backside. There's no heat. And she's like, oh, that's condemned. They've tore that. That's to be tore down or remodeled. And she's like, I can't believe they put you in them rooms. And I'm like, oh, that answers a lot. So yeah, I was like, it was the most worst. Yeah, and they ended up all staying in there, and I just went over and I ended up getting, because I went and I was like, well, here's the deal. It's 4:00 in the morning. I'm checking out at like 8:00 to drive home. can you, what's a deal you can give me? And she's like, I got $20. And yeah, I feel bad because you were put over there. I'm going to give you a room for $20. So I ended up staying, but totally weirdest place ever, and just condemned back of the hotel. I don't even remember what the hotel was called, but that was a good one. Going back, I think John, when we did John Schultz, he talked about the fight and the Clipper, where we got into it with it was an MC club, and, the guy basically attacked me. We had this big party after the gig. The guy, we had some CDs at the time, and the guy's like, hey, you guys ought to play some original music. And literally our apartment was packed with people, and then I ended up handing him, so I'm like, hey, we got to see. I'm like, you want to see it? I'll give it to you. Free. And we got original music. So I went into my room. I remember you had to weed your way into the room. I come back, and literally there's a table between me and the guy. I reach out and I hand him the disc, and he knocks it out of my hand, and he's like, that's not a CD, that's crap, and he ends up grabbing me. So, literally grabs me by the throat. So we're over this table, we're going at it. Well, he's literally got me in a death lock on my, and I'm trying to hit, and there's people all around us. And so next thing I know, I see little Frank coming over the top. Because Frank was short, he just jumps over these guys, this crowd of people, and gets on this guy. But the whole time, this guy's got me in this death grip. And I'm literally going out. At this point, I'm starting to get weak-legged. I'm like, I'm trying not to hit everyone around me, but it was just, and Frank just tackles this guy, So we end up going in, and I remember we had that long stairwell out the back, and we ended up wrestling into there. And I think John had got out there. He was on the outside where the porch was, and I was actually going to kick that guy down the stairs. And John grabbed me and said, no, dude, just let him go, because I was so fired up from the whole deal. And so the guy ended up taking off, and that's when he went out front. And so we kind of, and during this time, the party had, everybody left. Literally, the stream of people leaving the apartment, out the front, down, because they knew the cops were going to come. Who knows, And so the guy goes out front, and then he ends up, he's out on the road. We're up in the apartment, and, he's just kind of he's taunting us, And so I look over at Frank, and I'm like, do you want to go out? And he's like, yeah, let's go. So we end up running out there, and that's where Frank did, John talked about the Superman thing. And the one thing I do remember is that, so, we didn't really double jump him. Frank kind of got him, and then I kind of stepped away from it. And then, I don't know, somehow me and him got into it again. And I just remember being on I jumped on him on the ground, and, and just adrenaline and mad and drinking and all that. And then I just remember a hand on my shoulder, and I turned around, and that's when the nightstick kind of got me. That was when the cops came up. They had been watching the whole time, and it was like, oh, I'm done. That's it. You're it. And so we ended up going to jail. So that was a show that was. The Clipper was notorious for that kind of stuff. Not just the parties and the different things we did there, but that one always kind of stick to, and the fact that we had to get bailed out of jail. Me and Frank did, and then. We ended up, I think when we moved to LA, we ended up having to before we went, we had to go to court over it because we had some stuff going on with it, and we ended up getting our lawyer, I can't remember his name, the guy that we always used as our lawyer.
John Blackwell.
Yeah. So he got us out of it, he basically, pleaded us out, and we paid a fine or something. But come to find out that the guy he'd been on drugs and meth and, some different things, and he really wasn't even, I don't think he was in the club yet. I think he was just prospecting. And a little add-on to that story is that, so, I don't know, months later, we were still playing there. We play there from time to time. I had gone up there on Thursday with Mike Noblin, our roadie guy. And I went up, Thursday was quarter pitcher night, or whatever it was. So I go up there. I take Mike with me. I'm like, hey, let's go up to the Clipper for quarter beer night. So we go up there, and it's me and Mike, and we're in there, and we're all hanging out, and we're drinking, got our pitchers, and I remember going up to the bar, and Darla was the bartender. So I'm sitting there talking to Darla, and we're just going, she's like, oh, it's cool to see you up here on the night you're not playing and all this, and I'm like, yeah, I'm just up here hanging out with my friend. And I look over, and this guy walks up to me, and I look over, and it's him. It's that guy. We got in, and I kind of look at him, he looks at me, and I look back at him. Nothing was said, but you knew, we just kind of walked away from it. You know what I mean? I was like, that awkward moment, oh, there you are. And then I kind of realized how tall he was. But yeah, that was a night. But good times up there. All right, local legends. Oh, where's the list to begin? Obviously, I've I've been honored to play with a lot of people, and and I'll kind of lean on my the band guys, obviously, John Schultz, Rick Henderson, Jeff Eden, John Patty, drums. As far as bass goes, I would say for me, John Messiah was big. Obviously Ryan Rose, Ryan Rose was a guitar player, but absolutely fantastic. I mean, amazing bass player. Just took the bass and can just play it. Awesome bass player. So that Pete Ramsey from the Crankenstein. Obviously, that was a big band. Pete in there and Bunky Walker from way back when and just there's just Central Illinois is such a talented pool of musicians. I mean, I've just been privileged to be able to play with them. Mitch Bland, great vocalist. Like I said, Joey and Sherry, Joey Prater, and then Sherry Depew and Jerry Depew, and great vocals, guitar. Obviously, Bob Moulton was big in the area. Bob's always been a huge player. Gary Horry, Eric Yarbrough, Kenny. I mean, I just had such a Scott McClellan. I mean, the list could go on of just people that have just influenced me and helped me be better. Not even necessarily as bass players, but just as all around musicians. Pat Bogner. I mean, Silent Tiger was big. That's kind of where we were coming out in the scene, and Silent Tiger was packing in cahoots. You go there on a Friday or Saturday, and Silent Tiger's playing with Jeff Logston and Tommy was singing, or Mike Lane was singing, or whoever they had at the time. But you go down there and it's packed. You know what I mean? So obviously them players influenced a lot and kind of helped in the scene. Help introduce me to the scene around here and get me into the band. Kind of the way things work in the bar business around here. And there was others bands from way back, Atomic Ace, and them guys, and the Fox guys. I mean, we were doing, when we spoke about Wanted, Wanted Entertainment, and we were doing shows with them guys, regularly, like every week, doing these showcases. So, they were big, as far as the original scene and creating music. Obviously Carl Mustard from, Trash Can Muffy, and even Frank, and there's just so many great musicians, and and to put it in contrast is that, like, when we moved to Tucson for almost 2 years. So when we moved out to Tucson, I was thinking, Tucson's a 1 million person city, and I kind of looked on their scene. I'm like, it's got to have a huge music scene, right? I mean, I'm going to get out there and I'll be able to find some other players, and and going to be able to jump in, play in Phoenix, do all this stuff, and so I ended up going out there, and my first plan was to start kind of another Pantera Tribute band. I was going to start different from Cemetery Gates, just started out there, and I put out ads. I joined all their music boards out there, and plenty of musicians. But the thing I found weird about it is that everybody wanted to start a band. Everybody wanted to join a band that was already established, but they didn't want to start a band. So literally, I would reach out, hey, bass, or a drummer, I'm ready to do Pantera or whatever, and I'd reach out and they're like, well, you're an established band, right? No, well, I'm looking for an established band. So, I thought, what? And then I just going through, and I think the whole time I was out there, I only auditioned one time for a band, and it was a totally different type of band. It was a Madonna. It was supposed to be like a rock singer. It was a rock band with a girl singer, but then it actually came that it was a Madonna tribute band. So I'm like, this is not going to work. I mean, I could do some tribute music, but I can't do Madonna tribute. I'm just not. For one, Madonna has great bass players, and I am not that technical of a player. So it was a totally, and it just kind of was like, wow, And I think a lot of it's just because Tucson was a city that people they come in and out. I mean, it's got a big college, it's got military base, snowbird, people in and out all the time. So I think it's very hard for bands to get kind of established there and get going. But it just made me really kind of look at what we had here, and the multitude of musicianship, and just having the different, caliber of musicians and the scene we have. And it just really made you kind of really appreciate that, because you would think you'd go to a bigger city, it would be that, And I think a lot of it here is we're such a tight-knit group, we've all played, in bands with each other. In one stage, most of us have all either jammed or, filled in or been in a band. So I think that makes us a tight-knit group, and I think that just really, that's something that Central Illinois is very special with. You don't really see that a lot elsewhere, and we've had some leave, unfortunately. I mean, not good for them. They're moving off, to different states and to do different things. So, they'll be missed. But, I think collectively, Illinois, Central Illinois has had some of the best musicians, and everyone has influenced me, or pushed me to be better, or pushed me to be, just, a better player, a better person, and understand, the business, and just, it's been a good run, it's been a good run of being able to play with everybody. So, but the list is so long, I could go on for hours, I mean, through the history, of all the people we've ever played with and been in bands with, but, like said, with like you and John and Frank and, the Cemetery Gates, Rick and Jeff Eaton and, just the Barflies and all the bands, Uncle Pucker. I mean, it's a brotherhood, and everybody becomes family in a sense. And I think that's something that we're lucky to have that, and regardless of what we're doing, what we're playing, we're all in it together, and we're all a brother and sisterhood of musicians, and that's awesome for Central Illinois. So, the internet not only has killed the sales of music, not necessarily killed it, just brought out in a different way where you can get it for free or whatever, but it's kind of taken the mystique out of bands. And this is one thing that it's always kind of stuck out with me, because when we were, younger and bands like Kiss or bands like Motley Crue, Bon Jovi, you didn't know a lot about them. So there was a certain air of mystique about that band. Or that person in the band, like Vince Neil, you didn't know much about him, other than the album that came out, what was in the lineup. So I think that drew you in, and I think the internet's kind of ruined that a little bit, because now you know everything about everybody. So then they're no longer like this, they're no longer like this icon in the sky for you, because you realize that, they drive a normal car or they live here. So in some sense, for me, I feel the internet's taken out that mystique a little bit, which is, not to say it's made them any less better as musicians or as their music, but I just feel that was part of it. That part of mysticism of kind of understanding, what do these guys do in their downtime? You didn't know that, so when you would meet them, you're like, what are these guys about? So I think that drew you in. But then obviously, not having a CD in your hand where you could read liner notes and, see the lyrics or even an album or whatever has definitely changed. I think it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for upcoming musicians, and I think we're actually kind of seeing that. You still see bands coming out, but we're not seeing the bands that are having the stick, like an Aerosmith or a Zeppelin or Motley Crue or a Kiss, or the bands that are going to live on for AC/DC. We're not seeing that today. We're seeing bands that are here. They're producing, and they're doing the best they can. It's not that the music's bad. I just think it's so over available that you get so washed into the information so quick, you don't really get to bite into it. So I think that's going to be tough. I feel it's going to go back. I feel there's going to be a shift, and I think there already has, with bands coming back out with albums, doing real records again. And some bands not even putting their stuff on iTunes. I mean, Tool didn't do that for a long time. Other bands didn't do that for a long time. I think kind of forcing you to go out and get that album again. And I think everything comes in peaks and valleys. So you're going to basically, we've kind of hit a peak of the internet age, and I think people are going to kind of want to go back to, that original sound and hearing things on a record and not being able to digitally download it, hearing it on an analog type situation, and just appreciating it more than just getting it. And hopefully that's what it kind of goes back to, and it gives musicians, younger musicians that are coming up, a chance to really kind of lock in their their talent, and then be able to have a lasting effect on people, because I think that's what we're missing today. There's so many bands that are coming out, and they can you can record an album on your laptop. I mean, literally. You don't even need a full band. You know what I mean? You can get a drum machine or whatever you play, and and you can record that. So, and you can put out music so quickly, and it's I think that's it's just like everything else. You just get too much of it, and it becomes over, and nothing sticks to you. So I'm hoping that it'll, as technology always does, it'll kind of slow down, and it'll kind of roll back to that original thought. So I just I hope in the future that's what happens, and music can take off. I hope it doesn't stay in this digital